To give you a little bit of background on myself, who doesn't like talking about themselves? I'm Dave Carpenter with Deutsch Family Wine and Spirits. We have about 28 different wine brands and 3 different whiskey brands, and then a vodka brand as well. But I'm responsible on the spirits side. So what I do is, as the spirits production manager, I make sure that we have enough whiskey, that it is good, that it's going into bottles, and that the bottles look correct and are safe. Spirits production manager. The other side is master blender for our Redemption line of whiskeys. For Redemption, I'm responsible for coming up with the blends, taking all of our gorgeous, delicious liquid coming out of the MGP Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, making sure each batch is better and better, and going into that bottle, once again, going out into the market, making sure bottling is on time. But one thing we run into a lot is this stigma against sourced spirits. Now, in my past lives throughout this industry, I started off in production, actually milling the grain at the distillery, running the still, running the boiler, making sure that we were getting barrels pulled out of the warehouse, that we had bottles running down the line, that we had enough labels, physical, hands-on production. Deutsch family does not own any distilleries. So we have to get our whiskey from other places. And that's through several different ways. One way would be through sourcing, which by this I mean actually getting your whiskey pre-aged from someone else, or through contract distilling, being actually distilling at someone else under contract your recipe, whatever how you decide to make it there. Bit of a jump. And that's where we run into this stigma. People say that, oh, just because it's coming out of this one distillery, everyone who gets their whiskey there, it all tastes the same. That's the stigma we're fighting against. And I'd like to talk through some of that with you all on how we can fight that stigma and get over it, and that just because you don't have your hand on the steam dial, on the steam valve, doesn't mean that you can't put out a quality spirit or wine. There's more wine people than spirits here, but I do spirits. So that counts. So what is sourced? Once again, I'll get back into those definitions, and what does it mean for you? Terminology, NDP. This is coined by our good friend, Mr. Chuck Cowdery, or at least it's attributed to him. An NDP is a non-distilling producer. This is somebody who, like Deutsch, does not own a distillery, does not have a distilled spirits permit, does not pay employees to run the still. We still release distilled products. We are a non-distilling producer. Sourced spirits, as we went over just a little bit ago, that is buying pre-made, pre-aged whiskey from someone else. You would go to a broker and say, hey, I need 1,000 barrels of 6-year-old Kentucky bourbon. You may even give them a mash bill, what recipe you're working off of. They'll then say, yes, we have that. No, we don't. Or maybe we'll go find some. You buy it from them. You are now sourcing pre-made whiskey or sourced spirits. Delay, contract. Once again, this is you actually going to a distillery and saying, hey, I would like you to make for us, from the ground up, this whiskey or this vodka. With that, it's not buying something that's been pre-made. You are actually giving them your recipe or a recipe that you agree upon. And from there, they will make it for you. It is already owned by you. As soon as it comes off the still, or as soon as it goes in the barrel, depending upon how your contract is worded. It's one thing to keep an eye out for. So there are a lot of distilleries out there right now who are doing both sourced spirits and contracted. Now there are different volumes. You go to one distillery, their minimum volume for a contract distilled spirit may be 250 barrels. Someone else may be 1,000 barrels. Not everyone can do that. So there's also some of these new craft distilleries you see popping up that are cash poor. They love doing contract distilled work as well, and they may do 10 barrels. They may do 50 barrels. And with that, they're able to make cash up front It's whiskey that they can sell right off the bat, and they're not waiting 4 years for it. And you can have something that you already own, boom, it's sitting in the warehouse, done. You don't have to worry about 5 years from now, can I still get 10-year-old Canadian whiskey? Doesn't always work out that way. So, why is that a problem? And why is that changing? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe not. There we go. Why the stigma? Part 1. With this, it's going to be, maybe, yes, no, aha, people are the worst. General idea. So, in the past, some NDPs, people that were bottling sourced whiskey, lied. Happens, unfortunately. So with that, they were saying, hey, this is distilled right here in the heart of New York. I'm making this up. This is not an actual person. Could be. But that whiskey actually came from Canada. But nowhere on their label, nowhere in their marketing, does it say it came from Canada. That's a problem. And under the new TTB restrictions, that would be a very big problem, and they're cracking down a lot on that right now. But people have done it, and that has sort of stunned the whiskey geeks, the bourbon nerds, we love them, into thinking that anything where you did not own that distillery, that juice going into the bottle, oh, you're lying about where it came from. That one guy did it, therefore everybody does it. One wrong gets rid of 10 rights. So, how do we counteract that? What can we do about it? Be honest. That's one thing we like to do. With our Redemption line of whiskeys, we are proud to say that every drop of it comes from the MGP Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. It's on our website. We say it in public. It's all over all of our promotional materials. Happy about it. Because we have a special relationship with them and we think they're the specialists at what they do. Therefore, why would you not be proud? Why would you hide where your stuff is coming from? That's how we fight the people who have tarnished the name of source spirits or contract distilled spirits, is by us moving forward as a group and being proud of where our stuff is coming from, or at least pretending to. If your juice is coming from Canada, say so. That's a big one in the past. And these COLAs, these certificates of labels and authorization, those are being scrutinized to a very fine degree right now. The TTB have hired a lot more folks to go over and pick apart every last word on that label. And you have to say at a minimum what state it's coming out of. If it's made out of this country, it must be at least what country it's made in. However, usually you'll have a city on there, and that's a good way to find out where something is distilled usually. Look for the city. Yeah, plenty of skeletons in real distillers' fermenters. They like to. Stigma 2, no distillery. All of our favorite whiskey geeks, once again, they think that not owning this distillery means that it's inferior juice, or that it's not authentic, it's not real. In actuality, tons of master distillers do not run the stills at their big time 2,000 barrel a day distilleries. They're not milling the grain, they're not watching fermentation, they're not doing quality control. They go out into market, they talk to a bunch of people, go to events like this, and day-to-day running, they are not involved. They are not running the stills a lot of the time. That's not always true. But they're giving a pass because their name is on the bottle or because their family started the distillery 100 years ago. We don't get that as a sourced or NDP whiskey. Yeah, lots of them, they'll put their name on there. They may have something to do with the blending, but once again, they did not make the whiskey that's in the barrel. What's the difference? And once again, as with this, we can't lie. See rule number 1. We have to be honest about this. And yeah, if you don't own the distillery, if you're not the one making it, say so. It's pretty simple on that front. Third stigma. Same source, same juice. A lot of whiskey geeks and nerds love them to death. They think that just because this distillery is making whiskey for 30 bottled brands, that it's all the same liquid, which couldn't be farther from the truth. And this is where I love blind taste testings. Blind taste testings are our friend, because you can take brand A and brand B, and there are whole forums about this. Reddit loves this stuff. You hop in there and you see a list of whiskeys that were made at Z Distillery. It might list 30 brands. Go through and blind taste test some of these with friends, with consumers, and see if you think it's all the same. Because I love going through a warehouse and having 2 barrels side by side that came out of the same tank, that went into the barrel at the exact same time, same brand of cooperage. Taste those 2 barrels and they taste completely different. Not only that they taste like a different recipe, but they taste like they came from different states, much less coming out of the same tank. This is where blind comes in. This is where just actually getting liquid in people's mouths makes a difference. Because we can tell them all we like. Say, oh no, it tastes different. It tastes different. I swear. But when you can get them to say that, that's where we can win and where we can get over this stigma of same distillery, same juice. I wish it was all the same juice, because as a blender, if every barrel was exactly the same, I could just look at a spreadsheet and go, click, 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 click. Yeah, blend those barrels, done. It's going to taste exactly the same every time. That would be nice. It doesn't work out that way. On our Redemption Rye, we're on blend number 260 now. So when we're making blend 261 and going back and tasting all these others, so we can either have continuity of flavor or slightly increasing quality of flavor, wherever direction we want it to go. This takes a lot of thought and effort. Not the same juice, no matter how much we may wish it to be. So with that, contract does not mean crap. Just because it's contract distilled doesn't mean it's bad. Same thing. If contract doesn't mean crap, then source doesn't mean that other thing. Not all sourced, and I'm gonna give you all some love. I've been standing over there too long. They're tired of me. With this contract distilled whiskey and sourced whiskey, it is winning more awards than you think. Since not everyone is open about the fact that they source or contract distill, you don't know that this whiskey is winning awards, but it is, it's out there. Several of our whiskeys, not to toot our horn, have been winning double golds at San Francisco. They've been winning chairman's trophies at the Taste Awards or Spirit Awards. There's a lot of good whiskey out there that is award-winning and that you know that is either contract distilled or sourced. And a lot of them are open about it, but some aren't. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody. But some of these also that are going to come up on here used to be contract distilled or used to be sourced, but aren't anymore. They're turning around. They may have launched a new distillery in the last year or two. But you've got High West. Anyone in here heard of High West before? Okay, good. It's not just wine people. We've got some sleepy wine in over there. Everybody ready to nod off yet? Okay. Smooth Ambler, another one. Lots of awards. Highly well-regarded whiskey. Valmead, up and coming. You've got Whistle Pig. Awards out the wazoo. Not all of it's coming out of their little distillery. They are starting to distill more of their own, but more of this. And once again, I'm not throwing shade at any of these people. They have good whiskey out there because they got it from somebody who knew what they were doing. Maybe. Willet, once again, used to be, moving over to their own juice now. Angel's Envy, same story. Started off contract or sourced. Rock Hill Farms, same deal. Bullet, another big one, once again, building their own distilleries. And Jefferson's, I think, is either all contract or all sourced. Everyone's favorite coming up, maybe, Pappy. one of the most award-winning whiskeys of all time, beloved by millions, maybe hundreds of thousands, but millions, we'll say, sounds better, is contract distilled by someone who does not own the distillery. The Van Winkles do not own the Buffalo Trace Distillery, but Buffalo Trace makes gorgeous, fantastic wheated bourbons and wheated whiskeys for them, and it is the most asked for whiskey out there, I would say. I used to work at Jim Beam, and at the distillery, people would come in and say, "Hey, y'all got any of that Pappy?" "No, we don't make that, sir. I'm sorry." People would come from miles around asking for that. Sourced. So once again, sourced is not a bad word. Contract is not a bad word. Great stuff is coming out of contract distilled and source distilled. So how do we explain this to people? Let me give you some ideas. Who gets crap for this? NDPs, non-distilling producers. Other people in the room as well. But chefs don't. I was a chef for 10 years before I got into the whiskey industry. And I didn't raise my own cattle. I didn't grow my own microgreens. I didn't make my own cheese. I took specialty products from somebody that's all they did. And they were the best at raising that cattle or raising that fish or making that cheese. And took those specialist work and combined it into my dish or my plate. Same thing with sourcing a spirit. You go to the specialists, people who have been making it the best for years. Distilleries have been open for 150 years. You go into their control room, and the three guys sitting in there may have combined over 60, 70 years worth of experience running those stills. Is somebody opening a craft distillery that's been open for 2 years going to have that expertise? Or that economy of scale? Not even close. So why does whiskey get flack, but chefs don't? Who else? Movie producers don't. A movie producer doesn't get told, hey, you don't get to win the Academy Award for Best Movie because you didn't act out all the parts and run the camera and edit the film and do the color testing and wardrobe and the score. They get specialists at that because that one man isn't going to do it all, and they combine all that together to create the best final product. Same thing with sourcing your spirits. Getting the best in the business at what they do to create your brand. Coaches don't get shit for this. They don't score the touchdown, but they teach the team how to score. Now, is one player able to carry a team? Sometimes. However, the coach is the one that makes the team as a whole a winning force. You can do that in your brand as well. Last one, conductors. They are not going to be first violin and the timpani player and the person who even wrote the score. You think of all the famous conductors out there, there's at least a couple of them, that are still performing Mozart, Bach, Beethoven. They didn't write any of that. And they're not the ones playing the music, for that matter. They're not playing all the instruments, but they take all of those individuals, bring them together, once again, to create a cohesive whole. So, with that in mind, what other misconceptions could be out there in the world of sourced spirits that is holding back the next big brand, potentially your big brand? You see this stigma against sourced spirits going down and down and down. It's getting less and less, but it is still out there. The internet is dark and full of terrors. Just hop on a comment thread sometime on a whiskey review. It's fascinating. And then how can we as producers and suppliers, which a lot of the suppliers that you see in there are working very hard to help you. We, Deutsch family, by that I mean, work with quite a few people inside that room over there. It's fantastic to see them all in the same room. Let's just go around, walk around in a circle and just wave and you'll talk to everybody. There are some great people out here today as suppliers who can just buoy you on a wave of whiskey or spirits of some other kind, rum, for example, and you can lean on them, lean on their expertise to launch your brand. You can still be the tastemaker without having your hand on that steam dial and actually making the whiskey. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you all for coming out, and if you have any questions about sourced spirits, please feel free, let me know. Water good.
This is probably a question for the TTB, but what, as a winery, if you want to recidify or produce a brand of spirit, what licensing would be involved with that?
Right off the bat, I'll say there'd be two you would need. You need a DSP or a distilled spirits permit, and that would be to actually make a distilled product. And then if you wanted to process it or bottle it on site, you would need a rectification license. Those would be the two main ones to go for. Yeah, DSP allows you to make, and rectification allows you to blend, bottle, process. Anyone else? Absolutely. You got a mic coming for you.
This is more of a comment that I would share and fortify what you're saying as opposed to a question, but I come from a consumer products background at large, and Calvin Klein hasn't sewed his own jeans since the 70s. I make cosmetics. There's nothing that the product you've used to style your beard and your mustache, I guarantee you, those people did not make that product. It's all contract manufactured out. I've made #1 products. Nobody knows who I am, but I can tell you, I can walk into a CVS and point at it and say, I made this, I made this, I made this, I made this. It's all about the branding and differentiation. Something can be exactly the same, but people are going to have different attributes and what's important to their target audience, and that's beyond the most important thing. And so I've enjoyed watching this process. I feel like I see this industry catching up to what is normalcy in basically every other consumer product segment out there. So
Absolutely.
The stigma is peeling away, but it's interesting to me that it's just catching up now in this business.
Right. And whiskey's only been around for, a few hundred years. We're getting there. Thank you very much. Yes, whiskey is not the only group.
We're in the wine business, so I'm just going to relate this question to a question I asked earlier. When we're, a high value winery making a wine and somebody wants to do a private label, the first thing they want is they want all your quality, but it's got to be a lower price than who I put it against the shelf with. Is that sort of the same? I mean, to take your analogy, if Jim Beam is sourcing for somebody lower, are they expecting to get a lower price than normal and then put it next to Jim Beam at a higher price? Or are they looking to just get a lower bottom line all the way across and beat you on value?
Everyone likes to make money. Everyone wants margin. And sometimes with that, yes, you may have a customer who comes in wanting to buy spirits, and they want to pay $2 a proof gallon for it, but on the shelf they're wanting to charge $20 a proof gallon for it. That happens. But when you come to a distillery, that distillery may currently be making their spirits at $2.50 a proof gallon. These are random numbers. These are not real numbers. They're not going to take a loss, and at the same time, they're more likely going to charge you a premium over what it costs them, because every gallon that they sell you that was going to go into their product, they're losing margin on for the final sale. That final sale of bottled product going on the shelf has the highest margin when they sell it to the distributor. Whereas if they're selling it as new make distillate, you're missing out on that added bonus profit. So they will charge you slightly more to a lot more, depending on who you are, above what it costs them to make. But yes, you have people wanting to jump in right now. Everyone wants a $1,000 bottle of whiskey and they want to pay $5 to make it. Yeah, you see all sides right now.
We have time for one more question, if anyone has one. Right over here.
Do you feel that sourcing spirits in a way gives you more of an opportunity to pull different elements from a palette to create a more complex final product? Because then you have a larger, say if it's a larger distiller and you're inside of their barrel facility, you can pull from, the sugar barrels, you can get the high notes, the low notes, blend together, and you have just more of an opportunity to build that complexity as opposed to maybe being a smaller producer who you don't have that level quite yet.
Buying barrels that you did not make can give you a lot more options. Now, that's not to say, now we're going to the other end, that sourced spirits by definition are better than whiskey that was all made in one spot. But yes, what you're able to do is say, take this one distillery, they're really well known for having this hay and straw note in their whiskey that comes down to their special yeast. Great. Buy 100 of those barrels. And then maybe to balance out that hay and straw, I want some really heavy caramel notes. Well, this distillery down here in Tennessee has a ton of that coming through because of the barrels they use. Yeah, run down there, grab some of that. You have a wide open spice rack to play with, depending upon where you go for your barrels and what sort of friendships and partnerships that you can broker among all of these people. But as someone who has a distilled spirits permit or owns their own distillery, there's not really anything saying you can't do that either. You could do both. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, you have so many options. There's so much fantastic whiskey being made right now that if you can play your cards right, is or is not available. And you can just play with all of it. You can buy, well, some people allow you to buy a barrel. Fine, try it, play with it. You can also just play with samples. You can get samples from all these different locations, use that to your advantage, and build a small scale 100 milliliter blend with maybe some of it's your own, maybe 100 of it is coming from outside other distilleries. Yeah, there's so much unlimited opportunity out there that you can't help but have fun. Absolutely, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.